You have been taught to respect your feelings, to wait for motivation, to act when inspiration strikes. But wealth does not wait for mood. Success does not consult your emotions before advancing. It rewards movement, not sentiment. Mood is a poor master. There are days when your mind will invent reasons to delay. Tomorrow will be better. I need to recharge. I'm not at my best today. And each time you obey that whisper, you strengthen it. Soon, hesitation becomes habit. Do you know how fortunes are quietly lost? Not through dramatic collapse, but through accumulated inaction, a postponed call, a delayed decision, a task left untouched because you did not feel aligned. Feeling is fleeting. Discipline is durable. If you only act when enthusiasm appears, you surrender your future to circumstance. But the man who acts regardless of mood builds momentum that mood cannot interrupt. Momentum is not magic. It is mechanical. When you move, even slightly, resistance weakens. The mind resists starting more than it resists continuing. Once in motion, the work often feels lighter than it did in anticipation. But here is what most never learn. The first action must be taken before the feeling changes. You cannot wait for clarity. You cannot wait for certainty. You cannot wait for emotional permission. The act itself creates the shift you seek. Have you ever noticed how energy appears after you begin? How doubt fades once your hands are engaged? That is not coincidence. It is law. Action reorganizes thought. When you remain still, your mind magnifies discomfort. When you move, it recalibrates. The task shrinks. The obstacle becomes manageable. Confidence returns, not because you felt ready, but because you acted anyway. There is a hidden danger in honoring mood above mission. Mood is influenced by fatigue, distraction, comparison, fear. It fluctuates hourly. If you anchor your productivity to something so unstable, your results will be unstable as well. Mission, however, is fixed. When your purpose is definite, it does not evaporate because you are tired. It does not dissolve because you are discouraged. It stands waiting for your obedience. The disciplined man asks a different question, not how do I feel, but what must be done? This question shifts power. It removes negotiation. It replaces emotion with obligation. And obligation, when aligned with purpose, becomes momentum. You may believe forcing yourself sounds harsh, yet there is a deeper truth. Every time you override resistance, you build authority over your own mind. Authority builds confidence. Confidence builds speed. Speed builds opportunity. And opportunity compounds into success. Let me be clear. You will not always feel powerful. You will not always feel inspired. There will be days when doubt clouds your vision. The disciplined do not escape these days. They simply refuse to be governed by them. Mood says rest. Mission says rise. Mood says wait. Mission says begin. Mood says later. Mission says now. The difference between the drifting and the determined is not talent. It is obedience to purpose over preference. In this lesson, you will discover how to force momentum when your emotions resist, how to break inertia in minutes, not hours, how to train your mind to respond to command rather than comfort. But first, accept this. Motivation is unreliable. Discipline is sovereign. When you learn to act before you feel like it, you unlock a power most men never taste. You no longer depend on circumstance for energy. You create energy through execution. That is how momentum begins. Not with inspiration, but with a decision. Let us begin with a truth most men resist. You have been trained to consult your feelings before you consult your duty. You have been told to wait until inspiration appears. You have been encouraged to act when enthusiasm is present and to rest when it is absent. This teaching is comforting, but it quietly weakens authority over self. Mood is unstable. It shifts with sleep, with food, with conversation, with memory. It is influenced by events that have nothing to do with your chief aim. If your productivity depends upon something so unstable, your results will reflect that instability. Mission, however, is fixed. A definite purpose does not vanish because you are tired. It does not dissolve because you are discouraged. It remains constant, waiting for obedience. The man who waits to feel ready surrenders his command. Each morning he asks his emotions for permission. If permission is denied, he postpones. In postponement, he trains his mind to value comfort above commitment. This negotiation with emotion is subtle. It sounds reasonable. It says, tomorrow will be better. It says, I am not at my best today. It says, I need the proper frame of mind. Each sentence feels intelligent. Together, they form a pattern of drift. Drift does not announce itself with collapse. It appears as small delay, a call postponed, a page unwritten, a decision deferred because feeling was not aligned. Years accumulate quietly under such obedience. I have studied men who carried heavy burdens, yet refused to consult mood before acting. Abraham Lincoln endured profound discouragement, yet he did not suspend duty because of it. His mission stood above his emotion. Such men are not without feeling. They simply refuse to be governed by it. Observe how others respond to a man whose steadiness does not fluctuate with mood. They trust him. They rely upon him. They sense authority in him, not because he is always enthusiastic, but because he is consistent. Consistency builds reputation. Reputation builds opportunity. 10 years can vanish waiting for readiness. 20 may fade in waiting for emotional clarity. 30 may pass before a man realizes that his feelings were never meant to command him. Shift the governing question. Replace, how do I feel, with what must be done. This question removes negotiation. It does not deny fatigue. It denies delay. There will be mornings when rising feels heavy. Rise anyway. There will be afternoons when effort feels difficult. Proceed anyway. There will be evenings when doubt whispers retreat. Continue anyway. Every time you act despite resistance, you strengthen authority over your own mind. Every time you yield to preference, you weaken it. Authority is built in small acts of obedience to mission. It is not dramatic. It is daily. When mood says rest, but mission says rise, choose mission. When mood says postpone, but mission says begin, choose mission. Each choice compounds. The subconscious mind observes your behavior. If you act only when comfortable, it learns that comfort is prerequisite. If you act regardless, it learns that command is sovereign. Affirm daily, my mission governs me, not my mood. I act according to purpose, not preference. I move whether I feel ready or not. Repeat until the words feel natural. Mood is a servant. It is not a sovereign. It may influence you briefly, but it must not direct you permanently. The difference between the drifting and the determined is not talent. It is obedience to purpose over preference. You may not always feel strong. You may not always feel inspired, but you can always act. Action is choice. Feeling is fluctuation. If you would save 10 years of hesitation, detach your productivity from emotion now. If you would save 20, refuse to negotiate with mood again. If you would save 30, live permanently under mission rather than feeling. Now, this is where momentum begins. Not in inspiration, but in decision. And decision, when repeated daily, creates a man who no longer asks permission from his own resistance. He rises, he acts, he builds, and his future is shaped not by feeling, but by command. Momentum is not a mystery. It is mechanical. A body at rest remains at rest until acted upon by force. A mind at rest remains in hesitation until acted upon by decision. The majority of men misunderstand this law. They assume they must feel energetic before they begin. They do not understand that beginning produces energy. The greatest resistance you will experience is not in continuing the work, it is in starting it. Before the first movement, the mind exaggerates difficulty. It enlarges the task. It whispers of fatigue and complexity. Once engaged, the work often feels lighter than it did in anticipation. This is law. Action reorganizes thought. When you move, your mind recalibrates. It begins searching for ways to assist you rather than reasons to delay you. Doubt diminishes once the hands are engaged. Consider how many times reluctance vanished after you began. The page that seemed impossible became manageable. The conversation that felt intimidating became natural. The first 5 minutes dissolved the resistance of 50. Yet most men never experience this shift because they wait for the feeling to change before they act. They reverse the law. Thomas Edison did not wait for perfect clarity before experimenting. He acted, observed, adjusted, and acted again. His genius was not in waiting for inspiration. It was in beginning without it. Henry Ford did not wait for unanimous approval before constructing new models. He initiated movement and refined afterward. Clarity followed commitment. The mind magnifies tasks when idle. It shrinks them when engaged. This is why procrastination strengthens fear. Stillness feeds imagination. Movement disciplines it. 10 years can vanish waiting for readiness. 20 waiting for the right mood. 30 waiting for enthusiasm to return. Master initiation and you master momentum. Break inertia within minutes. Establish a rule. When resistance appears, act within 5 minutes. Make the call. Write the first sentence. Review the first page. Begin the smallest measurable act. Do not argue with yourself. Argument strengthens hesitation. Command eliminates it. The first movement need not be grand. It must be deliberate. Once in motion, continuation becomes easier than retreat. The subconscious mind responds to action as proof of commitment. When you begin promptly, it recognizes seriousness and releases energy accordingly. Energy often appears after engagement because the body and mind adjust to demand. The sensation of fatigue is frequently anticipation rather than reality. Distinguish between true exhaustion and reluctance. Exhaustion requires rest. Reluctance requires initiation. Affirm daily, I begin before I feel ready. I move before doubt grows. Action creates my energy. Repeat until this principle feels automatic. You do not conquer resistance by debating it. You conquer it by stepping forward. The man who waits for feeling lives under feeling. The man who acts first commands it. Imagine compressing 10 years of delayed starts into 1 year of immediate initiation. Imagine reclaiming 20 years of postponed ambition by acting within minutes rather than days. Imagine erasing 30 years of hesitation by establishing a 5-minute rule. Such reclamation begins with one simple decision. Act before emotion changes. Momentum is built in the first motion. Make it, repeat it, and resistance will gradually lose its authority over you. You will discover that readiness is not prerequisite to action. Action is prerequisite to readiness. Begin. And let movement instruct your mind that you are no longer governed by mood, but by mission. There is a truth few men are willing to confront. Before you command others, before you command enterprise, before you command influence, you must command your own mind. The mind, left untrained, becomes argumentative. It bargains. It pleads for relief. It magnifies inconvenience. Yet the mind, properly instructed, becomes a loyal servant. You train it every day, whether you realize it or not. Each time you negotiate with resistance, you strengthen its authority. Each time you declare, I will, and then retract, you weaken your command. The mind observes inconsistency and learns that your words are flexible. In flexibility without discipline lies weakness. Self-pity often disguises itself as reflection. You may tell yourself you deserve rest because effort feels heavy. You may rehearse reasons for delay that sound compassionate. But repeated indulgence creates internal disorder. The mind begins to expect exemption from strain. Strain is not enemy. It is teacher. Establish non-negotiable standards. If you decide that a task must be completed, it will be completed regardless of mood. If you commit to rising at a certain hour, you rise. Remove the space for arguments. Henry Ford's discipline did not begin with factories. It began with himself. He did not rely upon enthusiasm to govern his day. He relied upon structure. Structure eliminated debate. Debate drains energy. Decision preserves it. When you remove negotiation, clarity increases. You no longer waste strength arguing with yourself. You move. Self-command produces self-confidence. Confidence does not arise from feeling powerful. It arises from evidence that you obey your own word. When you say you will act and you act, trust builds internally. That trust strengthens authority. Authority produces speed. Others sense this authority. They perceive a man who does not contradict himself. They recognize steadiness in his conduct. Reliability becomes his reputation. 10 years are often wasted in internal debate. 20 in vacillation between comfort and commitment, 30 in inconsistency that erodes self-trust. Remove debate as daily practice. When resistance appears, answer it with command rather than conversation. The mind may protest at first. It may argue for ease, continue anyway. In time, it will obey more quickly. Discipline is not cruelty toward yourself. It is respect for your mission. You cannot build wealth while pleading with reluctance daily. You must instruct your reluctance to serve rather than rule. Affirm daily, I command my mind, I obey my decisions, I do what must be done without negotiation. Repeat until authority becomes natural. There will still be days of heaviness. There will still be moments of fatigue. Command does not eliminate difficulty. It prevents difficulty from dictating behavior. When you consistently override resistance, the mind learns that complaint will not be rewarded. It ceases arguing as frequently. What once required force becomes habit. Imagine reclaiming 10 years by eliminating internal debate. Imagine recovering 20 years of scattered effort by installing structure. Imagine redeeming 30 years by living under self-command rather than self-indulgence. Authority over others is fragile without authority over self. Master yourself first. Instruct your mind clearly. Hold to your standard. And in time, resistance will become servant rather than sovereign. That is how momentum becomes permanent, not through inspiration, but through command. There is another misunderstanding that keeps men motionless. They stare at the height of their ambition and become discouraged by its scale. They see the mountain and forget that mountains are climbed step by step. The undisciplined mind becomes overwhelmed, not because the goal is impossible, but because it is undefined in daily terms. A definite purpose must be translated into definite daily action. When the objective is vast, but the next step is unclear, hesitation returns. The mind magnifies the whole and neglects the part. This creates paralysis. Break the mission into measurable acts, not abstract intentions, but visible tasks. A letter written, a proposal drafted, a conversation initiated, a plan reviewed. Each small completion provides psychological reinforcement. Completion produces satisfaction. Satisfaction strengthens belief. Belief increases willingness to continue. Charles M. Schwab did not build influence in a single dramatic gesture. He cultivated enthusiasm and productivity daily. His advancement was steady. Those who observed him did not witness sudden brilliance. They witnessed consistent output. Consistency appears ordinary in the moment. In accumulation, it becomes extraordinary. 10 years are often lost waiting for dramatic opportunity. 20 waiting for a single defining act. 30 spent expecting transformation to occur in one stroke. Transformation rarely arrives that way. It arrives through measured advance. When you complete a small task aligned with your chief aim, you prove to yourself that progress is possible. When you complete another, you reinforce that proof. Over weeks, these acts accumulate into visible movement. Others begin to notice the change. They see steady growth rather than sporadic enthusiasm. They sense reliability rather than fluctuation. The man who advances daily does not require bursts of inspiration. He relies upon structure. At the end of each day, ask yourself, what measurable progress have I made? If the answer is unclear, the day was unstructured. Structure restores momentum. This does not require long hours. It requires focused, definite action. Small acts, repeated, become force. Force becomes influence. Influence becomes income. Do not underestimate the power of minor completion. A single letter may open connection. A single improvement may increase value. A single adjustment may multiply efficiency. The mind thrives on visible progress. Without it, discouragement creeps in. With it, persistence strengthens. Affirm daily. I complete small tasks faithfully. My steady progress becomes great power. Repeat until minor acts feel significant. Avoid the trap of waiting for grand opportunity. Grand opportunity often appears disguised as small duty. Imagine reclaiming 10 years by refusing to waste days without measurable advancement. Imagine compressing 20 years of scattered ambition into focused daily steps. Imagine redeeming 30 years of delay by adopting measured advance now. The mountain remains large, but the step is manageable. Take the step, complete the act, record the progress, and watch as steady accumulation creates momentum that mood cannot interrupt. Great force is rarely born in explosion. It is born in repetition. Repeat wisely, advance daily, and let the law of measured advance carry you where enthusiasm alone never could. There will be hours when energy feels absent. This is not exception, it is certainty. The error most men make is assuming that action requires enthusiasm. They believe vitality must appear first. Yet in many cases, vitality follows effort rather than preceding it. Fatigue has two forms. One is physical and demands restoration. The other is mental resistance disguised as weariness. Wisdom lies in distinguishing between the two. True exhaustion improves with rest. Mental resistance improves with movement. When you begin despite heaviness, something subtle shifts. The mind adjusts to demand. Blood quickens. Attention sharpens. What felt impossible begins to feel manageable. If you surrender at the first sign of heaviness, you train your mind to associate discomfort with retreat. That association weakens authority. I have observed men who advanced most rapidly, not during seasons of ease, but during seasons of discouragement. They continued when enthusiasm was absent. They completed tasks without applause. They endured routine without recognition. Their strength was not dramatic, it was quiet. Others notice this quiet endurance. They describe such men as dependable. They trust them with responsibility because they have seen them perform without excitement. 10 years are often lost, yielding to mild fatigue. 20 to indulging every fluctuation of energy. 30 to confusing comfort with recovery. This does not mean denying the need for rest. Rest is essential. But rest must be deliberate, not impulsive. It must be scheduled, not negotiated at the first whisper of reluctance. Ask yourself, is this true exhaustion or is it resistance? If the body is genuinely depleted, restore it wisely. If it is reluctance, act. Movement frequently restores vitality. Begin with a small task. Engage your hands. Focus attention. Observe how heaviness often diminishes after initiation. Affirm daily. I act even when enthusiasm is absent. Movement restores my strength. I am stronger than temporary fatigue. Repeat until the words feel credible. The disciplined man does not wait for emotional energy. He manufactures momentum through obedience. In moments of heaviness, remind yourself of your chief aim. Reconnect effort with purpose. Fatigue shrinks when meaning increases. Imagine reclaiming 10 years by refusing to surrender to ordinary discouragement. Imagine reclaiming 20 by acting during dull seasons rather than postponing them. Imagine reclaiming 30 by developing endurance where others retreat. Endurance compounds just as enthusiasm does. The man who works only when inspired will experience irregular progress. The man who works through discouragement will build steady ascent. Strength is not measured by how you perform when eager. It is measured by how you perform when reluctant. Choose performance. Let fatigue become training ground rather than excuse. And in time, you will discover that heaviness loses its authority over you. Momentum will carry you forward even when emotion falters. That is the mark of durable discipline, and durable discipline builds durable success. There is a quality that distinguishes the advancing man from the stagnant one. It is not always brilliance. It is not always superior resources. It is speed. Not reckless speed, but prompt execution once decision has been made. Opportunity does not remain idle while you deliberate endlessly. It moves, it shifts, it presents itself briefly, then passes to the man prepared to act. Hesitation gives competitors time. It weakens position. It transforms advantage into regret. Many men disguise fear as refinement. They say they are polishing details. They claim they are perfecting their plan. Yet beneath this refinement often lies reluctance to expose themselves to risk. Perfectionism becomes a refined excuse. The decisive man understands that progress outruns polish. He moves with adequate preparation and improves while advancing. He does not wait for flawless conditions. Consider the builders of vast enterprises. They did not consult every critic before moving. They did not wait for unanimous approval. They advanced, adjusted, and advanced again. Urgency communicates seriousness. When you respond quickly to opportunity, others interpret it as confidence. They align with you because they sense direction. 10 years are lost in excessive refinement. 20 in revising what should have been released. 30 in polishing while others proceed. Measure your days by output rather than intention. It is not what you meant to do that compounds. It is what you completed. Speed does not require haste. It requires clarity followed by action without unnecessary pause. Eliminate the habit of postponing small acts. Return calls promptly. Respond to opportunity swiftly. Complete assignments without delay. Each prompt action builds momentum. Momentum attracts additional opportunity. Affirm daily. I act promptly once I decide. I value progress over perfection. I move with disciplined speed. Repeat until urgency feels natural rather than forced. The man who moves quickly builds reputation as reliable. Others trust his word because they observe immediate follow-through. Speed also preserves energy. When tasks are postponed, they occupy thought. When completed promptly, they release mental space. Opportunity compounds for those who respond without delay. Imagine reclaiming 10 years by refusing to linger in refinement. Imagine reclaiming 20 by acting swiftly rather than hesitating. Imagine reclaiming 30 by living under disciplined urgency. You need not rush blindly. You must simply refuse to stall unnecessarily. Decision without speed weakens. Decision with prompt execution strengthens. Let your standard be this: once decided, act. Reduce delay, increase output, and allow disciplined speed to multiply your momentum beyond what mood or inspiration alone could ever accomplish. There is a stage beyond forcing yourself. In the beginning, you must override resistance consciously. You must command your mind, initiate movement, act despite mood, and complete small tasks deliberately. This requires effort. But if repeated long enough, effort transforms into identity. What was once forced becomes natural. You cease asking whether you feel like it. You cease debating whether to begin. You cease negotiating with comfort. You act because you are the man who acts. Character is nothing more than repeated obedience to principle. When you obey your mission daily, mission becomes character. When character forms, discipline no longer feels external. It feels inherent. Temporary discipline produces temporary results. A permanent standard produces permanent momentum. Many men surge for a season. They act intensely when inspired, then retreat when enthusiasm fades. Their progress resembles waves. The man who becomes the standard resembles a rising tide. Others begin to notice something different in you. They do not necessarily see dramatic emotion. They see steadiness. They see follow-through. They observe that your conduct does not depend upon applause. This steadiness builds confidence in others. They trust you with responsibility because you have proven consistency. Confidence also builds within. You no longer question whether you will act. You know you will. That certainty reduces internal conflict. Energy once spent debating is now spent producing. Years accumulate differently under such a standard. 10 years saved by eliminating the cycles of surge and collapse. 20 saved by sustaining motion during dull seasons. 30 saved by living under permanent discipline rather than temporary inspiration. Momentum once established deeply requires protection. Complacency threatens progress as much as resistance once did. Guard against relaxation that erodes standard. Revisit your purpose regularly. Reaffirm your commitment daily. Continue small acts of measured advance. Maintain speed without recklessness. Endure fatigue without surrender. Command your mind without cruelty. Integrate every principle. Act before feeling. Initiate within minutes. Command without negotiation. Complete small tasks daily. Work through discouragement. Move with speed once decided. Live under standard rather than mood. When these habits unite, momentum becomes identity. Identity shapes destiny. You will still experience moments of resistance, yet they will no longer govern you. They will be noticed and overridden swiftly. Others may describe you as driven. They may call you disciplined. They may wonder how you maintain energy. The truth is simple. You no longer wait for feeling to lead. You lead. Affirm daily. I act regardless of mood. I honor my purpose above preference. I live in steady motion. Repeat until it reflects your life. Imagine compressing 10 years of drift into 1 year of disciplined momentum. Imagine reclaiming 20 years of delay by installing permanent standards. Imagine erasing 30 years of inconsistency by becoming the man who moves daily. This is how momentum is forced, and this is how it becomes natural. Not by waiting, not by hoping, but by commanding action until action becomes habit, habit becomes character, and character becomes success. Mood may fluctuate, circumstance may change, but the man who has become the standard remains steady. And steadiness, sustained across years, builds fortunes that enthusiasm alone never could. There is a final truth I must leave with you, and it is this. The world does not measure you by your intentions, nor by your feelings, nor by the depth of your private ambition. It measures you by movement, quiet, repeated, disciplined movement. The man who learns to move when he does not feel like it separates himself from the multitude more decisively than the man who merely dreams with intensity. You have now seen the pattern. Mood fluctuates, resistance appears, fatigue whispers, doubt suggests postponement. These are not unusual conditions. They are universal. The difference between the drifting and the determined is not the absence of such whispers. It is the refusal to obey them. Most men live governed by emotional weather. If the sky within is clear, they advance. If clouds gather, they retreat. Years pass beneath this unstable climate. They wonder why progress feels irregular. They blame circumstance. They do not see that they surrendered command to feeling long ago. The disciplined man establishes a different order. He does not deny that clouds appear. He simply refuses to anchor his direction to them. He asks, what must be done? And then he does it. This question, repeated daily, has built enterprises, reputations, and influence across generations. Consider how different your life would appear had you acted promptly every time resistance first appeared. How many postponed calls would have become alliances? How many unwritten pages would have become ideas of value? How many delayed decisions would have become turning points? 10 years can be consumed by hesitation so subtle it feels harmless. 20 years may dissolve under the habit of later. 30 may pass beneath the illusion that tomorrow will offer stronger motivation. Tomorrow rarely offers anything different from today unless you decide differently. The saving of time is not accomplished through haste. It is accomplished through refusal to delay. When you eliminate negotiation with mood, you compress time. You achieve in 1 year what others stretch across 5. You build in 5 what others require 15 to assemble. This compression is not magical. It is mechanical. Movement accumulates. Inaction accumulates as well. Both compound. The question is not whether you will compound. It is what you will compound. When you rise despite reluctance, you invest in strength. When you begin before feeling changes, you invest in speed. When you complete small tasks daily, you invest in structure. When you command your mind rather than consult it, you invest in authority. These investments mature quietly. At first, no one applauds your discipline. There is no ceremony for rising early when you feel heavy. There is no audience for writing when enthusiasm is absent. There is no crowd observing your refusal to postpone. Yet this is precisely why the habit is powerful. It builds character without distraction. Character built privately becomes influence expressed publicly. You will notice something as you persist. Resistance begins to lose its sharpness. Tasks that once required force become routine. The debate within grows shorter. The interval between decision and action narrows. Momentum, once forced, becomes familiar. This familiarity is dangerous if misunderstood. It may tempt you toward complacency. Guard against it. The same law that builds momentum can erode it if neglected. Continue to reaffirm your mission. Continue to measure your days by output. Continue to act before emotion shifts. You are not striving for temporary discipline. You are constructing identity. Identity governs behavior more reliably than inspiration ever could. When you see yourself as a man who acts regardless of mood, your conduct aligns automatically. You do not ask whether to begin, you begin. You do not debate whether to continue, you continue. This is the transformation from effort to standard. Observe the men history remembers for achievement. They were not free from discouragement. They were not immune to fatigue. They were not perpetually inspired. They simply refused to surrender their schedule to emotion. They lived under command rather than preference. This is available to you. Not through brilliance, not through sudden revelation, through repetition. Repetition installs belief. Belief shapes expectation. Expectation influences performance. Performance produces result. This chain operates whether you direct it or not. Direct it. Affirm each morning. I act before I feel ready. I complete what I begin. I honor my purpose above comfort. Speak it until it is not merely language, but law within you. In moments of heaviness, remember this: strength is not displayed in ease. It is forged in reluctance. The hour you most wish to delay is often the hour that most strengthens you if obeyed. The majority never taste this strengthening because they retreat too soon. They assume resistance signals incapacity. It signals opportunity for growth. When you push through, even slightly, you prove to yourself that resistance is not sovereign. That proof accumulates. Self-trust grows. Self-trust reduces fear. Reduced fear increases speed. Speed creates advantage. Advantage attracts opportunity. Opportunity multiplies income. Income expands influence. Influence increases responsibility. Responsibility demands further discipline. Thus, the cycle continues upward. Break the cycle at hesitation and it collapses. Sustain it at action and it expands. If you would save 10 years, begin acting within minutes rather than days. If you would save 20, eliminate negotiation with mood permanently. If you would save 30, make obedience to purpose your identity rather than your aspiration. The world does not withhold success from you because you lack desire. It withholds it because you delay execution. Remove delay and watch what changes. There will still be seasons of discouragement. There will still be tasks that feel heavy. There will still be days when enthusiasm fades. But you will not fade with it. You will act anyway. And in acting anyway, you will discover a truth most never encounter. Energy often appears after obedience. Confidence follows completion. Clarity emerges through motion. You were never waiting for motivation. You were waiting for decision. Decide daily. Move daily, complete daily. Let others wait for feeling. You act under command. And in years to come, when others wonder how you advance so steadily, you will know the answer was never dramatic. You simply moved when you did not feel like it, again and again, until movement became your nature, and your nature became success.